Welcome back to the Tool Crib. Today we're going to be looking at another Leatherman Juice model, this time the Juice CS4. Now, much like the Juice S2 that we reviewed earlier, this particular model looks like it's headed for retirement. So as of today, it is still available on Leatherman's website at a reduced price. So it's down from its normal retail of $79 down to $60. And it appears that the remaining juices are being cut down in price so that they can get rid of the remaining stock and more than likely are going to be retired. So let's get into the specs of this tool, and then we'll talk about the tool set and how this one differs from the Juice S2. Let's get started. The weight on the Juice CS4 is a little heavier than that of the Juice S2. It comes in at 5.57 ounces, and that translates to 158 grams. Now, its overall length in the closed position is identical for all the Juice models, actually, at 3 1/4 inches or approximately 83 millimeters. The width on it is 1 1/4 wide or about 32 millimeters. And the depth of it is about 3/4 of an inch wide on this model or 19 millimeters. Let's get into the tool set. This one has a little bit different tool set than what we're going to find in the Juice S2. Namely, the corkscrew is one of the main differences. But let's get into it and so show you what the Juice CS4 is all about. The first tool that we're going to look at is the knife blade on the Juice CS4. Now, all the knife blades on all the Juice series are exactly the same. They're going to be the same length, same styling, the whole works. So this is a 420 HC blade. Comes in a little under 2 inches at 1 15/16 of an inch or about 49 millimeters. Now, these blades do not lock into place. None of the tools on the Juice series lock into place, but they do have a decent amount of retention here but you do need to be aware that they do not lock out. That is, for some people that's a plus. For countries that have, stricter knife laws, and for others that would be a disadvantage. Then on the opposite side, we have an awl. Now, the awl on the CS4 is designed a little differently. You can see that it's not one solid piece. It's actually a bent piece of stainless steel, and they do provide a reaming edge on here that works pretty well. Now, this is not the greatest awl, but it's kind of nice that it's on a tool of this size. Now, the next tool, to get it out, you'll have to have your awl open first because the lip actually goes over the spine of the saw blade. So you'll have to have the awl open first, and then you can close it back up, and then you have access to your saw. Now, the saw on the Juice CS4 is pretty nice, actually. It's one of the advantages that this multi-tool has over the very popular Juice S2. The S2 does not have a saw included, so it works really, really well too. It would be nice if this tool locked out, but in the fashion that you'll be using it, I've really never had one of these double over on me. That being said, I don't use this tool very often either, though. Then if we'll get that closed up, and we'll flip around to the opposite side. First thing we'll look at is the scissors. Now, the scissors are going to be identical to those of the Juice S2. And they are pretty good scissors. They do well on paper, cardboard, string, fishing line. They'll work well on paracord as well. Sometimes they have a little bit of a tendency to jam up, but for the most part, they really do work pretty well. The next tool over are actually, these two tools work in combination with one another. So we have our corkscrew here, and then we have a 3 combination tool. So what this does is it has the can opener, has the bottle cap lifter, and then the top portion here actually works in tandem with this corkscrew. So what you'll do is you will tie your corkscrew through the cork of your wine bottle, and then you are able to rotate this other piece down, and you will position this so it is on the lip of the wine bottle, and then you're able to use that as a pry point, and they work together to allow you to get some extra leverage there to pull corks out of wine bottles. Interesting design that they put on there. Then if we get it opened up and we'll look at the interior tools, the first tool is going to be your combination number 1, number 2 Phillips, and that is a full dimensional Phillips driver. And this one actually works pretty well. The downside to the Juice series is the fact that all of the drivers are a little stubby, but they do work very well. Then, well, next to that, before I forget, there's a lanyard loop in there. It's a little difficult to pull out, but you do have the ability to put a lanyard on the Juice CS4. On the opposite handle, we have 3 tools. These are going to be our flat drivers. So we have a 1/16 flat driver, a 1/8 flat driver, and a 1/4 flat driver. Now normally the 1/4 inch or the larger drivers will double as pry tools, but this one is built pretty thin, so I wouldn't really trust this as a pry tool. It might work on the occasional paint can once in a while, but if it's really stuck on there, I think I'd find a different tool as opposed to damaging this one. And then the last tools are going to be our pliers. So we have our needle nose, regular pliers, and then our wire cutters, and you do have a notch for hard wire cutting. Now, with the size of this tool and the amount of leverage that you get out of it, I think the biggest hard wire that I would ever try to cut with it might be like a coat hanger size. Above that or beyond that, this tool, you have to work within the limitations of the tool. And this is not a full-size tool. This is a pocket multi-tool. So it's definitely going to be less capable than, say, that of a rebar or a Wave Plus. And you need to keep that in mind. Now, the pliers do work pretty well. The wire cutting capability, sometimes what I generally like to do is I actually like to set it down into the hard wire cutters, and it does a pretty decent job of cutting off wire. Sometimes if I get it up there in the cutters themselves, these particular pliers will sometimes jam up, and I think they did it that time, where you really have to physically pry them apart, and you can see that it didn't do that great a job cutting through that wire. So really you have to understand the limitations of the tool. They're not that great of pliers, but in a pinch they will do an okay job. Now, cutting soft wire down in the hard wire cutters actually works out pretty well. Well, let's talk a little bit more about what are the good things about that. What are the attributes to the CS4? Why you might want to carry it, and then kind of my thoughts on if I would actually have made this tool a little bit different than what they did, and we'll talk about that as well. The first thing that I think is an advantage on the Juice CS4, and really the Juice series of tools kind of more closely are comparable to Victorinox multi-knives as opposed, Swiss Army knives, as opposed to other genres of multi-tool for their size, their capability. Now, there are models of Victorinox that are in similar frame sizes, similar size, overall size, that are going to have more capability. But the Juice series of tools does things a little bit different because they're plier-based multi-tools as opposed to knife-based multi-tools. One of the advantages I think that CS4 has is the fact that it has a better blade steel. So the 420HC is definitely, definitely an advantage over some of the Victorinox style knives. Now, it also has a little bit of a disadvantage because they have shortened this blade up. They actually have room to put about a 3/8 longer blade in here. I don't know if it's because of knife laws that they kept that underneath 2 inches, more strict knife laws in Europe that they've decided to scale that back a bit. The original Juice series of tools actually did full-length blades, and I actually prefer those. I only have one of the originals, and that is a KF4, which is a very unique multi-tool in and of itself, but it's both an advantage and a disadvantage on the knife blade. Now, another advantage that the Juice CS4 has over the counterparts from Victorinox is the fact that it definitely has a usable plier base, usable pliers. So the pliers on here are actually work pretty well, and this is great as a for removing hooks. If you're using these things as a fishing tool, it's a really pretty decent set of pliers. Now, obviously, they're not going to be as robust as what we're going to find in other multi-tool, like in the Wave Plus or Rebar or Charge or Free. but they are fairly capable and they have a decent size to them, and they're definitely a distinct advantage over some of the Victorinox style knives. Now, some of the disadvantages. While the screwdrivers all work pretty well, they're really kind of short. One advantage that the Phillips will have over Victorinox counterparts, though, is most Victorinox knives have their Phillips perpendicular with the frame as opposed to parallel. And so that is an advantage that the Phillips driver has over some of its Victorinox counterparts. And the screwdrivers work really well. Now, some of the disadvantages. Well, depending on your point of view, the fact that you don't have locking tools can be a disadvantage. Personally, I like the tool set that's in the CS4 for the most part. I would have preferred that they did the CS4 a little bit differently. And it's mainly because of the corkscrew. Here in the US, we don't drink wine as proficiently as or as much as other parts of the world. And so that can seem sort of like really a tool that a lot of us really don't need. I would have rather seen that they, instead of having the scissors, let's see here, instead of having the scissors opposite of the can opener and bottle cap lifter, I would have rather seen they did it like the Juice CS or the Juice S2, I apologize, where they had the scissors and then they have that combination tool there. And then on the opposite side, I think the tool that would have been nice to have in this model would have been would have been a file. I think a file would have worked really, really well in this tool. So you would have your saw, a file, scissors, the can opener, and then your drivers and the pliers. And I think that would have worked better, because there was another model of Juice that did incorporate, actually there's a couple different more models that incorporated the corkscrew that still would have left that available for the people who do need that. But I think this tool would have worked better had they arranged that a little differently and added a file instead. At any rate, the Juice CS4, I think it's an A- tool. I do. I would have liked to seen that a little different. It's very pocketable. It's not quite as pocketable as the Juice S2 because it has one more layer, but I actually prefer that one more layer because it gives me a little bit more functionality. Now, the Juice series of tool is not really for people like me. I carry the Leatherman Surge, and so I deal with full-size multi-tools. This is more for somebody who works in an office, or somebody who wants to have something that's capable but doesn't necessarily want to have it in a sheath or on a pocket clip. That can also be a disadvantage for some. Speaking of a pocket clip, on the Juice series of tools, they do not offer a way to incorporate a pocket clip, and so for me, it's not that big of a deal. I guess more so because this is not the type of tool I'll carry very often. I have carried the Juice CS4 for those times when it's not really prudent to carry a full-size multi-tool, but it's few and far between. At any rate, the Juice CS4, I think it's a great tool, and it may fit your needs well. It might be for you. Like I said, if you do want to get the Juice CS4, it does appear that they're going to be phasing them out, so I would jump on it right away. Well, my name's Ben. This has been my review of the Leatherman Juice CS4. Hope you found it entertaining and helpful. If you did, please hit the thumbs up button, and I'll see you in the next one.